Welcome to week one. We're in the winter quarter now of 25-26, December, the first weekend in December. Here we go. We're in the book of Matthew, chapter 17 today, as we look at this section here of this called limitless God, basically. That we may feel like we have limits, but God has no limits, and learning to trust Him, learning to give Him over our entire lives. That's what we're going to be talking about today, and seeing how God works and knowing how God has worked in the past, okay? Before we look at this, if you haven't already, you need to hit subscribe. This is your first time to start watching us this quarter. Hit subscribe, hit the thumbs up button. Appreciate it if you'll do that. And then also, if you've got a question or a comment, you want to tell us where you're watching from, put that in the comments. You want to tell us how you're learning, what it is that you're picking up from this. Put that in there, and then also share the video with somebody else. If you find it helpful, share it with one of the other teachers. We're really here to help teachers who are leading, and then also help students who are in the class to understand the passage. So I'm Dr. Steve Brazel. I've been doing this now for about 6 years, I think. I've been doing this and excited about it, love doing it, and hope that it's helpful to you. Trust that it will be. Okay, let's dive into Matthew chapter 17. It says, when they reached the crowd, a man approached and knelt down before him. Lord, he said, have mercy on my son, because he has seizures and suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him. Okay, so here we have this man that shows up, right? We've got Jesus with his disciples, right? They're in a crowd. And then we've got this man that shows up who is, he's in great need, right? This man kneels down before him. So he takes a very subservient position. He's asking for help, right? Have mercy on my son. My son has seizures. He suffers terribly, falls into the fire, he falls into the water. He's got a terrible condition that overwhelms him. It's a condition that he seems to have no control. We might look at this man and say he's having epileptic seizures, kind of what it sounds like, right? But whatever it is, it's pretty bad. And he says, and we'll see more about this in a minute, right? But he says, look, I came to your disciples. I brought him to your disciples. I didn't want to disturb you. I found them. I brought my son to them, and they couldn't do anything. They couldn't heal him. I've tried everything I know to do. I even came to your disciples, and they couldn't help me. You hear the desperation in the man, right? The father. Let's not even call him just a man. Let's say he is a father who has great hurt for his son and great compassion, and he's desperate to help his son. So how is Jesus going to respond to that? Look what Jesus says. Jesus replied, you unbelieving and perverse generation, how long will I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring him here to me. Then Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and from that moment the boy was healed. Okay, so what we might have called epilepsy, Jesus diagnoses this is not epilepsy. This is not a physical condition, a diseased condition. This is a spiritual condition where a demon has possessed him, right? He rebukes the demon that is in the man. Okay, but that's not really, that is the miracle that happens, and it's amazing, right? Jesus rebukes the demon, it comes out, and the boy is healed. Don't miss that. But really the verse 17 is the one that draws our attention, isn't it? He says, the man says, I came to your disciples and they couldn't do anything. And Jesus responds, you unbelieving and perverse generation. Now, the question that I'd ask us to think about here is, who is he talking to? Who is he talking about? Is he talking about just the crowd in general? We see that, right? That he saw the crowd. Is he talking about the man? The man being unbelieving and perverse. Or is he talking about the disciples? Is that who he's talking about? Or is he talking about the son who has the demon? Maybe, but it seems to me he's probably talking about the disciples. He's talking about these followers of his who are walking with him and spending all this time with him. It seems maybe that's who he's talking about. But their faith, right, is so weak, so little. He calls them unbelieving and perverse. Now, have you ever thought about that to be lacking in faith is to be perverse, to have some kind of deep sinfulness there even. You know what perversion means? We think of that perversion, to have a deep sinfulness. Then, this next part sheds more light. That's why we're moving on here, and we'll probably come back to that. But it says, then the disciples approached Jesus privately. They went to talk to Jesus alone. And they said, why couldn't we drive it out? What was wrong? Why couldn't we do that? So you get the sense that they tried. They maybe diagnosed it. It was a demonic possession. But for some reason, they couldn't drive the demon out. And Jesus says, because of your little faith. Your little faith, he told them, for truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will tell this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Okay, so we need to think about this really well, because we don't want to miss what Jesus is telling them. He says, you have very little faith. And then he says, if you had the faith the size of a mustard seed, well, we know this is a very small seed, right? The mustard seed's a very small seed. We see this. If you had just the faith of a mustard seed, you could say to a mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. So he's saying it doesn't take a whole lot of faith to move a mountain. But then he tells them the reason that you couldn't cast the demon out is because you had a very small faith. So what's he saying here? He says it only takes a little bit of faith to do great things, but then he says, but you only had a little bit of faith. In fact, maybe they had less than a mustard seed size of faith. And I think that part of what we need to understand here is who the faith was in. Who the faith was in. Who were they trusting in? You see, the reason that only a little faith can move a mountain is not because of the person who has the faith, but the one in whom the person places his faith. See, if you put just a little bit of faith in God, if you have a little bit of faith in Jesus, then great things can happen because Jesus is great, because God is all-powerful. Great things can happen. A mountain could move from here to there because God could just move it, right? But if you have faith that's only in yourself, in your own ability to do things, it doesn't matter how much faith you have, you're not going to be able to do those things which only God can do. And when we think about casting out a demon or healing someone just by speaking to them, well, that's the only thing that God can do, right? So if your faith is just in yourself to do something that only God can do, it doesn't matter how much faith you have. And the problem wasn't that that their faith in Jesus was small, I guess. I would look at it as that their problem is that their faith in Jesus was much smaller than their faith in themselves. And this is why I think he calls them unbelieving and perverse. It's perverted to think that I could do anything that only God can do. It's not believing in Jesus. I mean, I might be a very good person. I might speak well. I might be a teacher. And yet, if my faith is in myself to get things done, and not in God to get things done that only God can do, then I'm not going to accomplish those things that only God can do. So they ask, well, why couldn't we, drive this demon out? And the answer was, because your faith is only in yourself. Or the faith that you have in me is much lower than the faith you had in you. You see, if you just had a little bit of faith just in me, if all the faith you had was only put in Jesus, if you knew, I can't do it, but God, maybe God can, I'll trust God, I know I can't, well then God can. Yes, it only takes that little bit of faith solely in Him to accomplish great things. But if that little bit of faith is overwhelmed by, I think I can do this, now I know, Jesus is great, but I think I can do this. Well, no, you can't. No, you can't. And this is what I think, where I think he's headed with this, personally, as I read it. That's how I read it. All right? Hope that's helped. I think it's a great thing. Some great questions. Now, look, hang on, because there's going to be some questions I'm going to put at the end that'll show up, as well as you'll see some of those in the comments below. So if those help you and as you lead your class, then that's what they're there for. All right? Just trying to help you. Have a great week. Have a great time teaching. Thank you for teaching. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, share the video with somebody else. All right, watch the questions. They're coming next. We'll see you next week.